Alright, back again, y'all, with another video. This one is going to be a story time, and it's inspired by a little discussion that I had in the comments section of one of my videos that led up to one of my subscribers telling me that he was stood up by a date. And I'm not going to name that person because I'm not certain whether he would feel comfortable with me mentioning his username. But I'm going to tell a story about this guy that I met on, I guess you could call it a dating service, a telephone dating service. I'm not even sure if it exists any longer, because I used to use that service back in the mid to early 1990s, and it was called Telematch. And the way that it worked is that the users would call into a main telephone line and scroll through the descriptions of profiles, and if anyone of the profiles piqued their interest, then they could send a message to that person. So I ended up meeting this guy through Telematch, and he seemed like a nice guy. I spoke to him by phone for about 2 weeks prior to our meeting. We had a lot of good conversations, but the thing that I found odd about him is that the bulk of his conversations were about how he regretted his military service because he felt like he didn't really get much out of his service besides the ability to travel the world. And he felt like he was also bilked out of his GI Bill. So he decided to go to school for mortuary sciences. That basically allows the person to work at funeral homes or either at medical examiners' offices. And he would tell me these stories about how he worked for this particular medical examiner's office for several years. And I think it did something to him because he seemed very obsessed about some of the things that he saw during his time working there. He would tell me stories about how he had to help with autopsies on dead babies. He got to work on cases that were profiled in the news, in the local news media. About 20 years ago, there was this plane that crashed in the Everglades, and he actually was working in the medical examiner's office when they brought in some of the bodies, and he described the bodies as mush and unidentifiable. And he just was very obsessed, and he went into a lot of detail as to the condition of some of the bodies that he did autopsies on or assisted with autopsies on. I found it really weird and fascinating at the same time, but aside from that, he seemed like a fairly decent guy. The first time that we actually met in person, he asked me to meet him at a Dunkin' Donuts, which I did. And I didn't really particularly find him all that attractive. He was actually a white guy, and he wasn't ugly. He was just basically an average looking guy. And I don't think that I was his type either. I could see myself being a friend to him, but I didn't really have much of a romantic interest in him. So after that initial meeting, he invited me out again. This time he wanted to invite me out on a more formal date. So when the day came, I got myself ready, as any woman would. Put on my makeup, got all dolled up and dressed up, did my hair and everything. And when the time came for me to meet him, I didn't get any phone call, and he didn't show up. I waited for like about 15 minutes for him to call me, and I didn't get any calls, so I just decided to go back home. And I was really disappointed and worried at the same time, because I figured that maybe something happened to him. And it seems kind of out of character for him to just, invite me out on a date and not call me to let me know what happened. So about an hour went by, and then I finally received a call from him, and he told me that he was very sorry that at the last minute his boss called him in for him to work because someone else called out sick and he needed to cover for that person. I was still upset, but I decided to give him a pass to overlook it. He seemed really apologetic about what happened and, genuine in his expression. So I decided to give him another chance. And he invited me out to a rescheduled date. When the time came, I went through the same routine, got ready, and I didn't hear anything. I think he contacted me like a day later, and when I saw his name and number pop up on the caller ID, I decided not to even answer the phone because I was so livid. And he left a message saying that he was very sorry, he had an emergency situation. So I was like, this guy is full of shit. It's either I came to the conclusion that he really didn't like me all that much. And, he, during some of our conversations, he mentioned his ex-girlfriend. And I got the impression that he really, he was still in love with his ex-girlfriend. Possibly he had broken up with her and he was on the, looking for someone to rebound with. I wasn't 100% certain that was the case, but that was my intuition was telling me that is what was going on. I decided not to respond to his voicemail message, and I never heard from him again. If a person flakes out on you like that, if they can't even show you the courtesy of calling ahead of time, at least, maybe an hour or two notice to save you the trouble of getting ready, that shows a complete disregard for your feelings and lack of respect for your time. Well, I think that, as I said before, I think that maybe he wasn't sure about me, that he was on the rebound from his ex-girlfriend, and he just was looking for someone to talk to keep him company, while he decided whether to pursue getting back with his girlfriend or not. In either case, I think it's very disrespectful for someone to, just stand you up and waste your fucking time, time that I could have been doing other things. Not only did he waste my time, inviting me out on dates and standing me up, he wasted about a month to about 6 weeks of conversations with him that basically led to nothing. So I guess the moral or the message of this video is that if somebody stands you up, if they don't have the courtesy and the decency to give you a call and let you know what happened in advance, that they can't make it to the date, something happened, they got into an accident, or had an emergency situation, then that person doesn't respect your feelings, they don't respect your time, and you should just drop their ass like a hot potato and keep it moving. So, all right.